Welcome again. We will continue letting our colleagues into the space as they arrive. After today's meeting, I just saw I've gotten a few requests for summaries of the meeting. We will make sure that we send out both the slides and a recording of this content. Thank you for being here today. We're here to dive into PA-146, otherwise known as the dyslexia legislation, as well as the 35M grant. So if you're familiar with those, we know that the legislation does not have funding attached to it, but that 35M portion does have funding. And we're so glad everyone is with us today just to learn more. I'd like to introduce you to two of my colleagues, Carrie Fromm and Heather Palmer, who will be facilitating much of today's learning. So we're so lucky to be here with them. And with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Carrie.
Thanks, Michelle. So just our agenda for today, we are going to talk about PA-146, which is known as the dyslexia law, and just a couple parts of it. We're not going to dig into the entire law. We're going to talk about what it says around assessment a little bit and what it says about curriculum. And then we're going to talk about the 35M grant and the parameters as we know them around how you apply and all of those good things right now. And then we're going to talk about how we can support you as we move forward in this process. So first off, we just want to have a little disclaimer here. We understand that there are many, many questions that are surrounding the dyslexia law and the 35M grant. And please note that the information that we're providing today reflects the most current guidance available to us at this time. As the state continues to finalize the process, updates may occur. And so we are committed to keeping you informed and we'll share new information as it becomes available. So please just know that this is at what we know today and we'll keep you updated. Next, as we go through today, we invite you to put any of your questions into this document or into this presentation so that we can support getting answers to anything that you had. The forum will continue to stay active and we'll send out this link and all the links that we share today at the end of the meeting with the copy of the video and the presentation. You may have questions that come up afterwards. Please feel free to put them in there as well. And we will reach out to the State Department of Education and get every question answered that we're possibly able to. And we will keep you updated on those responses. So I'm going to give you just a minute so you can click on the link and have it open somewhere and you can put questions in. You are welcome to also put questions in the chat, but they go by so fast that sometimes we miss them and we want to make sure that we don't miss any of your questions. Okay. So first we're going to talk about what Michigan Public Act 146 of 2024 is also known as the K-12 Literacy and Dyslexia Law. And it was enacted to transform literacy education across the state. Its primary goal is to enhance early literacy outcomes by aligning instruction with the science of reading, ensuring that all students receive evidence-based reading instruction. So there were three real big purposes there. We had aligning the instruction with the science of reading, and then we had the mandate the mandate of universal dyslexia screening starting in the 27-28 school year. All K-3 students, including transfer students, must be screened for characteristics of dyslexia at least 3 times annually using reliable and valid universal screening assessments. Additionally, students in grades 4 through 12 who exhibit signs of reading difficulties as identified by educators or parents are also required to be screened. This proactive approach aims to identify and support students with dyslexia early in their educational journey. Also, we want to ensure effective implementation, so the law emphasizes comprehensive professional development for educators. By the 27-28 school year, all literacy consultants, coaches, and personnel providing reading instruction from kindergarten through 12th grade must receive trainings in areas such as phonemic awareness, letters found correspondence, and structured literacy instructional strategies. The MDE is tasked with providing technical assistance and updating resources, including the Michigan Dyslexia Handbook, to support educators in this transition. So in summary, Michigan Public Act 146 is a comprehensive initiative designed to improve literacy outcomes by integrating scientific research into reading instruction, proactively identifying students with dyslexia, and equipping educators with the necessary tools and training to support all learners effectively. So with that, we want to talk just really briefly. You're going to hear about the science of reading throughout this presentation. So Michelle's going to just share a little bit about what we mean when we say the science of reading.
Sure. Thank you, Carrie. I think it's important when we're talking about the science of reading, especially as it appears in legislation, that we take a moment just to look at how the law itself defines it. So I'm going to go ahead and read the definition. This is the definition verbatim from PA 146. It can be found towards the end in that glossary section of terms. Science of reading means a cumulative and evolving body of evidence whose research studies follow a scientific process of inquiry and utilize scientific methods to help answer questions related to reading development and issues related to reading and writing derived from research from multiple fields of cognitive psychology, communication sciences, developmental psychology, education, special education, implementation science, linguistics, and neuroscience. But we also know that that's a mouthful. And so one thing that we really lean into at Wayne RESA is a common definition that comes from what is the science of reading.org. And this definition, it completely aligns with what the state is saying, but I think is a little shorter and more palatable in terms of just remembering what it is we mean when we're talking about the science of reading. The science of reading is a vast, interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading about reading and issues related to reading and writing. So basically, when we talk about the science of reading, we're talking about all of the research that goes into reading and writing. Thank you. So whenever we're talking about the science of reading, there are two big pieces that come up over and over again. I want to stress that the two pieces that we're about to discuss are not the only components of the science of reading, but they do come up quite a bit, and so we want to make sure that we're referencing them. The first of those is the simple view of reading. I often say that this is the worst named thing ever because when you think about the science of reading, it's anything but simple. And so when we think about the simple view, really what it says is that the product of decoding and listening comprehension is reading comprehension. And so the better one becomes at decoding or listening comprehension, the better their overall reading comprehension will be. You can see there in the black that that was actually published in 1986 by Goff and Tunmer. But that has been revised, and in 2020, the original author, Dr. Tunmer, actually provided a revision, and those revisions are there in red, and I think they're necessary and they're important. And what it did was it changed it from, it's not just decoding, but it's this idea overall of word recognition, and not just listening comprehension, but language comprehension. So when you think about listening comprehension might be, I heard all of the words, language comprehension gets to that idea of, and I know what those words mean. So it's bigger. And I think this is important to show because when we think about the science of reading, it's not an established body of research that will never change. It's continuing to evolve and change and has done so during the course of our careers. Next. Okay, the next piece that comes up quite a bit is this idea of Scarborough's rope. You're going to see a lot of the same pieces that you saw in that simple view of reading kind of represented here as well. So we have the language comprehension piece as well as the word recognition piece. When you look at that language comprehension piece at the top of the rope, we're talking about things like background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, the verbal reasoning, the literacy knowledge in general. And then at the bottom of that rope, we have these other components, these word recognition components of phonological awareness, that being able to kind of determine sounds and syllables and putting them together, that idea of decoding. Can we make that spelling sound correspondence? And then, of course, that sight recognition piece when we start to recognize those familiar words. And the one really nice thing about this rope that I really like is you think about each one of these strands as they become tighter and more developed, the rope becomes stronger and a child becomes a more skilled reader. So just as the rope would become stronger, our readers become stronger. My colleague, Dr. Laura Gabrion, likes to point out that that top portion of the rope is really where we focus with our secondary students. So that's where we really kind of lean into their knowledge base. Next. So when we think about the science of reading, we want to bring up the fact that our literacy essentials are based in that science of reading. In fact, the foundation of the literacy essentials is the science of reading. They're all based on research. We used to laugh when we would go through them. So much of that document is dedicated to reference pages, and that's important because we want you to be able to see what those research studies were that we're leaning into for this content. So when you think about the literacy essentials, this is all combined. All of these pieces feed into the science of reading. So if you feel good, if you're already implementing those literacy essentials, that you're on the right track. And if you haven't yet leaned into the literacy essentials, we're going to provide a link to those. They are wonderful resources, and our literacy team stands ready as always to help you with those. Thank you.
So we're going to now shift back to what the law says. We wanted to make sure that you understood what we meant when we said science of reading, because it's all over this document. But the first part we're going to talk about is Michigan is the assessment section of it. And because we've gotten a lot of questions around it. So all public schools must implement a reliable and valid reading assessment to screen for dyslexia and decoding difficulties. And those assessments have to include the following. They have to have a phonemic awareness screener, and that's the ability to hear and play with the smallest sounds in a word. So, for example, a child who can tell you that the word cat starts with k, or can change the in mat to make can change the in mat to s to make sat. That's phonemic awareness. This is all about hearing sounds, not letters or print yet, and it's critical building block to learning to read. The second one, which might be new to some of you, is the rapid automation naming, or the RAN. And the rapid automation naming is about how quickly a child can name common things that they see, like letters, numbers, colors, or pictures. We ask them to look at a page of shapes or letters and name them as fast as they can. Why? Because students who struggle with this often have trouble with reading fluency later on. And so it tells us how quickly the brain can recognize something and say it out loud. The next part of assessment that will need to be there is the letter sound correspondence. And this means knowing what sound each letter or groups of letters makes. For example, when a child sees the letter T and knows it makes the T sound, that's letter sound correspondence. It's the connection between letters and the sounds they represent, which is an essential skill for sounding out words. The fourth part is the single word reading. This assessment checks how well a child can read individual words on their own without any pictures or sentence clues. We might show a child a list of words like run, fish, or jump and ask them to read each one out loud. This gives a clear sense of whether they can decode and recognize words in isolation. Next is the nonsense word reading. In this task, we ask children to read made-up words like sog or tib. Why? Because it shows us whether they really understand how to use letter sound rules, not just memorized real words. If a child can sound out a nonsense word correctly, it tells us that they're building strong decoding skills. And the final requirement for the dyslexia screener is the oral passage reading fluency. And this means having a student read a short passage or paragraph out loud and reading it accurately, smoothly, and at a good pace. We listen to see if a student can read in a way that sounds natural, like spoken language, and if they understand what they're reading. Each of these assessment parts gives us a small but important piece of the puzzle. Together, they help us understand how a child is developing as a reader so we can give them the right support over time. Right now, as part of the Act, the Department of Education is taking steps to ensure that all schools are using high-quality, evidence-based assessments. By January 1st, 2026, the Michigan Department of Ed will release an official list of approved screening and progress monitoring tools. These tools will be aligned with the science of reading and meet the criteria that we just talked about, and they will be valid, reliable, and appropriate for identifying students at risk for reading difficulties, including dyslexia. The list will help districts confidently select assessments that support early identification, guide instruction, and monitor student progress over time. Once the list is released, Wayne RESA will set up webinars with the companies so that all of our constituents can learn more about what has been approved by the state. Okay, we're going to shift a little bit and talk about the curriculum aspect. There are lots of parts to this law. And again, we're just focusing in today a little bit on assessment and then what it says about curriculum. So Public Act 146 requires that all core class-wide elementary reading curricula and materials be aligned with the science of reading. So what does that mean? It means that the reading programs used in classroom must be based on research-backed methods proven to improve literacy outcomes and help students become more proficient readers. Specifically, these instruction methods must take a code emphasis approach, which focuses on teaching students how to decode words and build strong word recognition skills. This includes systematic instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, and other foundational skills, all of which are essential for fluent and confident reading. Curriculum materials and strategies must be supported by a strong body of scientific evidence, not just theory or preference. This ensures that all students, especially those at risk for reading difficulties, receive research-based instruction. In short, Section 5 of the law makes it clear that literacy instruction in Michigan must reflect what science tells us about how kids learn to read. Beginning in the 27-28 school year, PA-146 requires that all districts, including local school districts, intermediate school district, and public school academies, use reading instruction and curriculum materials that are evidence-based. This means instruction must be grounded in research and focusing on helping students master the foundational skills that are essential for becoming successful readers. The law specifically outlines key areas of focus: phonemic awareness, the ability to hear and identify and manipulate individual sounds in spoken words; phonics, understanding the relationship between letters and sounds so students can decode written words; fluency, reading with speed, accuracy, and expression. In addition to those core skills, instruction must also support the development of oral language, which is the ability to listen, speak, and communicate effectively; vocabulary, understanding and using a wide variety of words; and reading comprehension, making meaning from what is read. These components work together to build strong, confident readers. Under the law, reading programs must address all of these areas in a structured, intentional way so that every student has the ability to thrive in literacy. And if we think back to what Michelle was talking about earlier in Scarborough's rope, we can see all of those key components in what the law is requiring. So just like the strands of the rope, these skills are tightly woven together. When each strand is strong and well developed, students become fluent, confident readers. So the uh, PA-146 is very specific and calls out some things that curriculum may not include. So instructional methods and curriculum resources must not downplay the importance of using letter-sound relationships to decode or recognize unfamiliar words. In other words, students should be taught to rely on phonics, letter-sound knowledge, not guessing from picture or context when reading new words. This reinforces the law's commitment to evidence-based, structured literacy instruction. In part 23.3, they outline several practices that should not be used as the primary way of teaching students how to read because they do not align with the science of reading and can actually interfere with how children learn to decode. So these include, and again, this is directly from the law, prompting students to guess unknown words by looking at pictures or illustrations, skipping over unknown words and using context clues to figure them out, guessing words based only on the first sound and the surrounding text, memorizing words based on how they look instead of sounding them out, and using predictable or leveled text as the primary method for teaching new letter sound relationships. I think it's important in these lists to think about that um, leveled text and predictable text do have a place in our classroom. They could be used for knowledge building. They could be used for independent reading. They could be used for content level or content area reading, but it's not the primary way that students are taught. Um, so while some of these strategies may seem helpful on the surface, they encourage students to guess rather than decode. This can prevent them from developing the foundational skills they need to become accurate, fluent readers. So instead, again, the law requires that students are taught to use systematic, explicit phonics instruction, relying on letter sound knowledge to read unfamiliar words with confidence. So let's talk about how the law, works with Section 35M, which is the per pupil literacy grant. So the 35M grant provides $87 million in state funding to support high quality literacy instruction across Michigan. This is a formula grant, which means funds are distributed to districts based on a set formula. So every eligible district receives support. To ensure that these funds are used effectively, the law required the Michigan Department of Education to establish a Committee for Literacy Achievement, or the CLA. The CLA's job has been to critically evaluate key literacy-related resources, including literacy series and instructional materials, professional development related to literacy, and literacy tools and services used in schools. Based on the evaluation, the committee will create and maintain a list of all literacy products and services it reviews. This list will help districts make informed, research-aligned decisions about how to invest their grant funds. Now, this has been a big question. Who is eligible to receive these 35M grants? So it is all local school districts and all public school academies. So any everyone who is in this meeting, if you are part of an LEA or a PSA, you are eligible for these funds. And we want to make sure that everybody who needs literacy materials to help with their K-5 instruction or their K-12 professional development gets the funds that they need. So let's talk a little bit about how the funds are awarded. So the 35 grant, again, is a formula grant, which means funding is distributed based on a set calculation. So each approved district will receive a base allotment plus an additional per pupil amount for pre-K through 12th grade based on fall 2024 enrollment. Importantly, the amount awarded also depends on the ranking of the literacy materials or resources selected from the approved list created by the CLA. Districts can expect their first payment to be included in their October 2025 state aid payment. We've been asked, how much do we think that that will be? Well, because it's based on how many people apply and what they apply for, the amount it could vary greatly. Somebody asked earlier if we thought that it would cover a core curriculum, and we do believe it will cover the purchase of a core curriculum if that's what you're requesting. So the application process for the 35M grant will open in Nexus on June 2nd. The process has two phases. Phase 1 is quick and simple for the application part. You will log into Nexus and select Apply Later, agree to the grant assurances, then choose one literacy material or resource from the approved ranking list in one of the three categories. So Tier 1 literacy series and materials, intervention materials, or professional development materials. The deadline to complete the grant is for phase 1 is July 11th, 2025. We do understand that the list that people will have to choose from is supposed to be out in June. We've heard recently that it may be mid-June. So right now, these are the dates that the state has given us for the grant, but it could fluctuate based on when that list comes out. As soon as we know if there's any change, we will let you know that. Phase 2 is the budget part of the application, and the due date for phase 2 has not been released, but districts will receive more information once it becomes available. Completing phase 1 on time, though, is essential to secure your district's eligibility for funding. So when applying for the 35M grant, it's important to know what types of materials and supports are eligible for purchase. Tier 1 literacy materials and intervention materials are available for pre-K through 5. So those are two of the lists. These resources should be selected from the approved list and must align with the science of reading. Professional development is available for educators in grades pre-K through 12. This includes training that supports evidence-based literacy instruction and builds educator knowledge across all grade levels. This is not created at the district level. This again is from the lists that the CLA is curating. So you would be working with another vendor, and it is curriculum agnostic training. So it doesn't matter what curriculum you choose. It would be really more about the science of reading and best instructional practices based on research. So this question has been asked a lot about previously purchased materials. So any materials that you've purchased that are on the list after October 1st of 2024 can be reimbursed using 35M grant funds. So if you purchased a new thing, I'm going to give an example of Wonders, and you purchased that in November, you could use these funds to reimburse you. Additionally, even if you have an initial purchase that was made prior to October 1st, districts can still use grant funds to cover consumables, training, or other necessary items to support successful implementation of the approved curriculum. The curriculum, however, has to be the same one that is on the list. So if you have Wonders from 10 years ago, and I keep using the same example, but if you have it from 10 years ago, that's not going to be the same version that's on the list that comes out. So you have to be reimbursing for a list or for an item that is currently on the list. So the grant expenditure dates, the first, it will come out October 1st, and everything has to be spent by September 30th, 2026. There will be no carryover. So it's essentially, you've got the carryover year built into that, but it has to be spent by that date. Here is the timeline that has been set out by the state, and it's in PSA 146 along with some other information. So we're right now at the June section. The list has been published. The list should be published in June. The grant application window is June 2nd through July 11th. August and September, MDE reviews and approves applications, and October, MDE allocates funding. Some concern has been expressed about, well, this is a really tight turnaround to be able to implement in the fall. Full implementation doesn't have to be until 27-28 school year. So as you're thinking about how, if you're purchasing new materials, you want to think about how you're going to implement this in a way that's sustainable and respectful, and that will allow your staff and your students the best opportunity for success. So what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be rolled out this September, day one. There's different ways that we can help you at Wayne RESA. Think about different ways that you might implement as you go through. So with all of that being said about the grant, we are very fortunate to have Dr. Carol Ann Paul, who's the manager of state and federal programs and special populations, as part of our team. And she can help you with anything that has to do with applying for the grant, navigating the state and federal requirements. She can help you with aligning initiatives. So thinking about if you have other funding sources, how you might use them all in tandem with one another. And then thinking about how you create sustainable funding models. So even if you have never done anything in Nexus before and you just need somebody to help walk you through, Dr. Paul is here and willing to support. And again, we will send out her name and contact information when we send out all the additional links that go along with today's presentation.
And
So
Carrie,
right,
I believe we're lucky enough to have Dr. Paul in the
oh,
room. I think maybe if she could unmute maybe and share anything that might have been missed or that she'd like to let people know.
Um, I have my direct line on the screen there, and then also my email address. And please, when you email, I will try to make room on my calendar because I know how important this is to you. And I know also that the grant timeline is a bit short here. So if there's anything that you need, just don't hesitate to reach out. You are my top priority.
thanks, Dr. Paul. Okay, I'm going to hand this over to Heather Palmer, my colleague, to talk a little bit about supports that we'll be offering from Wayne RESA.
Thank you, Carrie. So, like you just said, we're going to spend some time just talking a little bit about how Wayne RESA can support you. So, thinking about that, one way we're supporting districts was by creating a centralized landing page that houses information for several of the grants, not just 35M, that's offered from MDE. And we're going to share the link in the chat. And this page was designed to keep everything in one convenient location. On the landing page, you'll find FAQs, timeline, key updates that we've received from the state, and we encourage you to bookmark this just for an easy reference in the future. One idea also we thought would be helpful for districts as we consider how to use these 35M grant funds was for curriculum materials was to create a curricular resource hub. So we reviewed the ed reports and the Reading League to determine which vendors to contact, and we reached out to these vendors to gather more information about their curriculum. We asked them to provide us details such as their contact information, a description of the curriculum, access to a demo account. We also asked them to give us an alignment from their curriculum to the literacy essentials. And we're still waiting on the official list from the state, but as soon as we do, we're going to receive more of that information about the approved curricular resources. We'll update the resource hub as well. And we also have links there for the Reading League and the Ed Report review. And we also had an opportunity to meet with Wayne County district leaders to talk about the implementation process of certain curriculums that they've been using. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see what the resource hub looks like, and we're going to drop the link in the chat as well. So this website is on a restricted server, so you're going to need access to in order to view it. I've added all the names from the email addresses that signed up today, but if you do have trouble seeing the site, just let me know and we will make sure that you get access to it. And an example of what the website looks like is, as you can see on the slide, it highlights an example of the resources available. We've also included the publisher contact information, such as email or the phone number as well. And then there's also a blue link there for the digital access. We believe the digital access is especially valuable because it provides demo accounts and offers deeper insight into the curricular resources. And we've also listed the districts across Wayne County who are currently using this curricular resource. We've also asked vendors to, like I said before, align their curriculum with the essential practices. So you're going to see a highlighted document that will have that alignment. And then you're going to see a video that we captured, just a conversation with district leaders about the implementation process. They're very honest and they provided valuable insight about how they had effectiveness with their curriculum and just feedback about how it went. On the next slide, we also just have a listserv here that we're going to drop the link, but we wanted to make sure that you had this. It's just the MDE's listserv, but it's a great way to stay informed about updates from the Michigan Department of Education. You can customize your own subscription by just selecting the types of notifications that are most relevant to your needs and your work. And we also wanted to share several links for you if you did not already have access to this. That's the Department of Education's resources for K-12 literacy and dyslexia law, and as well as the literacy grants. So these are all valuable resources to support your understanding of the implementation. We are currently also using these just to update our information, but we wanted that to be linked for you as well. So you had all that information at your fingertips.
So we know that this is a really tight turnaround to make a decision that's a legacy decision, right? That's going to last for a while inside of your districts and your schools. So one of the things that we are proposing is to support all of you with an abbreviated curriculum adoption process. So right now we have it set for June 17th through 19th. We know that there is another training that is on that day that we were made aware of just recently. So If after talking through this, it's something that interests you, we're going to ask you to RSVP and just put down that those dates don't work for you. And we're going to do our very best to manipulate dates. But at this 3-day training, our goal is to think about making sure everybody understands what best practices in ELA should look like and what does that look like inside of our curriculum. It would include creating a vision for ELA instruction so that all your stakeholders are on the same page when it comes to what does ELA look like inside of our community. We would talk about the importance of high quality instructional materials. And then understanding an adoption process, what does that look like? And what does a modified adoption process look like? Because that is one of the things that we're going to have to do with the shortened time period that the state has given us. And then winnowing our choices, how do we get down to smaller amounts? There's lots of products out there and there's going to be lots of things on the list, but how do you as a district or a school winnow down? And then selection tools, different rubrics and ways that you can think about moving forward. And then we want to help you create a plan to move forward. We also, in our survey, have asked if people were interested as well in support next year in the implementation phase, because we know that it's not just about selecting a resource, it's about how we implement it across our buildings. So we're asking you, if you have not already filled this out, we're asking you to please fill out this survey, letting us know how we can support you. We also realize that you may not have the committee or have enough time that you could dedicate these 3 days. We are here to support you in whatever way that you need support. So if that is a half day that we come in, if it's us coming in and helping you develop a plan, we are here to help you make the best decision possible and to think about implementation and getting a strong literacy program in your school. And it doesn't matter if you're a large district, we can support you, or if you're one school. You are all just as valuable, and everybody has different resources and different things that they can get to. And we want to make sure that you are getting what you need to make these hard decisions. On the form, it asks if you would like a literacy consultant to reach out to you. So please, if that's something, if you want to talk through a plan or want more information about any of this, please check that and one of us will reach out to you and chat with you about what is coming up. We do need to know by this Friday if you are interested in the June dates, and that is because we're partnering with a company called Compass Learning, and that's an offshoot of Ed Reports. So if you did the math work with us, it's similar types of trainers and things that will partner with Wayne RESA to provide you with the services that you need. Well, with that being said, we'd like to thank you for taking time to be with us today. We know that this is a lot. Again, we know that this is going to be a really fast process. Please don't get overwhelmed. Reach out to one of us for support. We will support you in any way that we can to make sure that all of the students in Michigan, and in particular Wayne County, get everything that they need to provide quality literacy instruction. So don't let this go. Don't let this go and go, oh, it's too much work. We are here to help you and support you. Please let us know how we can do that. And we thank you for your time today.